Look at him talk about the Lions. He absolutely loves them. So let's hear Lomas on comparing this team to when he played. Let's hear what he had to say.
Yeah, this is the one franchise that's been here for the entirety of the Super Bowl era that hasn't been there.
Yes.
Do you break down the wall this year?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I thought we got it last year. I thought we were going to break it down last year, but now I think these guys have the experience. I know how it was when I played in my first NFC championship game. I mean, your eyes are wide open. You don't know what's going on. I think now that they have that experience, when they get back to that big stage again, they'll handle it a lot differently.
You were on that first team to make it to the NFC Championship game. Then you got to call this one. Are there similarities between these two, or what is it about this team that's made it so special?
You know what? It is some similarities, but I just think this team, they're not carrying the baggage from the past. They're forging their own pathway, and that's what I enjoy. I think we might have carried some of the baggage of some of the teams that never got an opportunity, that didn't get there. But I think this team, they're so young, they don't care, and they're so carefree. So I think with the combination of Dan, and they got a great leader in Dan Campbell. I mean, he is such a great guy, and he's the right person to lead that team. So, yeah, I think similar in certain ways, but I think these guys are forging their own path.
It seems like after you guys won that NFC Championship game, it wasn't long before a lot of the locker room leaders were gone.
Yes.
This time they're locking them up.
Yes.
How important is that?
Oh, that's so important, because you're right about that. I remember me and Spielman leaving in 1995, and then guys like Kevin Glover, Benny Blades, Mel Gray. I mean, some of the staple guys that helped build that organization. To me, I think this window is open at least 4 to 5 more years, because like you said, they signed their young guys, they got them under contract, and some of these impact guys, I've never been on the team where I've seen some of the young guys come in and make such a big impact early, and that's what's going on with this team. So, yes, I think this window should be open at least 4 more years.
4 years. You heard low? 4 years. And
wow.
Hey,
love that.
The comparison, the question about comparing this team to when he played, that was the big thing with that Lions team is all the players. I mean, you watch the documentary about Barry, which was a great watch, by the way, but they went into that, how after they had that run, a lot of players departed and they weren't able to keep key players. And that's kind of been the opposite of what the Lions have been doing. I mean, they made an NFC title game and they re-signed like some integral parts of their football team, re-signed them. So, hey, he's right. And the Lions are doing it differently, which goes back to that banner discussion. It kind of celebrating the brand new Lions, which are a competent organization. Which is
the end of that whole interview, him saying the 4-year window. Like, I think that's the biggest question that everyone has with the Lions. It's like, how is Brad Holmes building this? And every single time, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, every time you saw one of these extensions come through online, a lot of the comments I saw, there's like half of people like, yeah, let's go. And then the other half, like with Jared Goff, it's like, oh no, like now you just pay, like you just close that window up a little because now your money tied to someone. And I think, like, to Lomas's point, like, this window is a 4-year gap. And then not even just that, right before he said that, he mentioned how so many new guys and rookies come in instantly and make an impact on this football team, to where when you do pay guys like Jared Goff and Amon-Ra and Panay, like, now you're just getting new guys in here and all of them are finding success. It's not like just a couple guys. You literally just paid multiple guys that you drafted and found success and won in the very, very late rounds. Now you're able to be like, hey, this window's very, very well open for the next 4 years. I remember before the Goff contract, fellas, what did I tell you? The window, 5-year window. Go get me 2 Super Bowls in the next 5 years. That was my big talking point, was like, this window is way more open than people think. And there was a conversation the day after losing the NFC Championship game of people saying, oh no, is the window closed? Is next year the only window you have? No, this thing is like Brad Holmes, Chris Spielman. They have built this thing for like this is one of those windows that is a sliding door window. This isn't a small car door window. This is a sliding door window. This thing's wide open for the next 4 years.
Yeah, another interesting thing he talked about was just like how they are going to recover from last year, and how like this group of guys, these young guys, are kind of just ready to put their head down and work and get back to that point. Obviously, with the tough loss to San Fran, but these guys are ready to hit the ground running and get right back to where they were. And he's spoke to how the young guys are really like have that mentality. So like that's a really good thing. And how he spoke that the young guys are making an immediate impact. So to have your roster built, the nucleus is really young players, and they get that moment early on in their career. It's great.
That's it, especially when Lomas was talking about how important it is that the key players are staying here. That's why I got so agitated that one tweet one time when it talked about all the teams that made it to the NFC Championship game and never returned, like that Atlanta Falcons team with Julio. When you have all those contracts leaving, when you have all those key players departing, then yes, I can understand where you can see the downfall of the Detroit Lions and why that's going to be SOL again. I could see that situation. But when you are keeping all these same players, and like Lomas said, just stuttered like a motherfucker there, my God. But like Lomas said, when you have all these young players that are playing at Pro Bowl level caliber, all pro level caliber, and Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown, this thing isn't going anywhere. They could have a down year with injuries, get hit by an injury bug, and I still believe this team the following year would recover and go right back to the same form, because what does that mean? They're probably have a down record. They're probably going to get better draft picks. So that's another way that they could reload talent that's already there. So this team's not going anywhere. And I think it's a little bit ignorant for you just to look at a roster and say, oh, they made it to the NFC Championship game, they're not getting back. I could see where you're talking about, okay, they'll probably get to the divisional round. But you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, the reason why they were so good, especially offensively, they had really good young players. You look at San Francisco when they recovered and they brought in Kyle Shanahan. You look at Deebo Samuel and George Kittle on rookie contracts. That was huge for them. Fred Warren on rookie contracts. That's huge for them. The Lions have that same type of situation going on. So I think it's just going to be a probably 4, 5, even 6-year window of the Detroit Lions cooking.
And it's crazy too. I mean, the Lions have had great players. I mean, they've had a wide receiver, the receiving yard record holder in Calvin Johnson, one of the greatest, I would say the second greatest wide receiver of all time. And you have Barry, who is unquestioned the GOAT. And then you have Matthew Stafford, who he'll be a Hall of Famer. You say what you want about him, but he'll be a Hall of Famer. And they just have not been able to build around these players. I mean, the most success they had was with Barry, and they didn't ultimately win a Super Bowl, obviously, and they have not yet to win one or make one. But they have an organization now that builds correctly. They know how to build a roster, and that comes from the top down. That's credit to Sheila for a lot of that. I mean, they've had great players, just never amounted to any success. But you look at what Lomas said. I want to break this down. He said 4 years. And when I watched this, I'm like, why would he say 4 years? And the only theory I have on this is, and I could be just reaching here, but this is my takeaway, and I want your guys' thoughts. And we'll get to some comments because I got a couple saved here we can break down. 4 years, you got some young guys that are going to have to get paid in 4 years, close to. So I would assume, unless Brad at the same time continues to draft really well. So if you do that, then you could replace guys. But do you think that has any relation to what he said? With Sam Laporta and all these guys, Brian Branch, and these guys coming up for contracts in the next 4 years? You think there's anything related to that, or you think he was just saying 4 years? Because I think those two things could be correlated with all the players that are up for contracts. You think it's just 4 years? I
think literally he was just like 4 years.
Because wouldn't you say it'll be open for a while? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think he was just. I don't think he was looking that deep into. I know like it's your job to kind of look into it that deep, but I don't think you. I bet you in 4 years, because it's like at the end of the day, you're gonna have to pay guys, but it's literally what I was saying before. It's like if Brad Holmes keeps drafting the way he is, that window is just going to keep extending and extending and extending. And like when you look at some teams that are elite, a lot of those players, like look at the Rams that won a Super Bowl. You have an older Matthew Stafford, an old Aaron Donald, Jalen, what's his name, Ramsey, that ends up leaving because he's getting older in the contract. Like there's a lot of players like that. Odell that was old. This Lions team, even with these young guys they signed, how many guys on that top 25, under 25 did they have on that list? Like 6 or 7 guys. Like they stacked it up. And that's not even taking into account who Brad Holmes drafts this year, next year, the year after. Whether you get to get rid of guys or not, like that window, that's why I think the window is kind of unlimited right now. Like, yeah, 4 years with the contracts that you just signed, because those are 4-year contracts, 5-year contract extensions. So I think that's like a good like viewpoint. But going forward, like that can just keep getting pushed back depending on some of these guys working out. Like keeping Brian Branch, the Jack Campbell. Like how do these guys work out? Sam Laporta. You're gonna have to get rid of some guys, but again, you're gonna consistently keep drafting more. So it's gonna help out.
I agree.
I think there's some legitimacy to it just because, I mean, how many NFL teams have dominated for a decade or even 6 years or 7 years? So I think when you look at this roster right now, to Booner, your point, you can only see 4 year down the line with the contracts, but it's super hard, especially with what these players are going to be doing in those contract years, to stay at the top for that long. So even if it is for 4 years, I'd be thrilled with that because there's not many teams that can dominate the NFL like I think the Detroit Lions are going to be able to do. So it's going to be a hell of a run. Like, I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were dominant for a decade, but there was years where they were 9-8, when they were 10-6. And same thing with the Packers. There were years when they won the division at 9-7. I always think as long as Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and Sheila are running this team, that it's going to be functional. So, but at that time, there's also going to be years where there's a dip in the roster. So with this roster right now, it's sky high, but I don't think it's fair to just think that it's always going to be this way, especially when they're going to be winning consistently.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Lomas went into Brad Holmes a little bit, talked about it, the importance of Brad Holmes, what he means to this organization, and why he hopes the team doesn't poach him away. Which I've actually never heard that. But let's hear Lomas on Brad Holmes.
GM is Brad Holmes.
Oh, man, he is the best. Look, we're going to have to keep teams from trying to poach him. I'm telling you, man, because when you have success, people want to duplicate it, and the only way they can is kind of to get the architect that set it out. Man, he is phenomenal, and I love his energy, man. His energy is there. His passion is there for the team. Man, he's a great guy. He's always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody else, and I think that's the magic sauce to Brad Holmes.
He said the magic sauce. I love Lomas, man. He's such a great dude. And he put in there, hope no team tries to poach him. We've seen that in the NFL, by the way. I don't think it'll happen with Brad, in all seriousness.
What examples are there? Because that would be nuts.
I don't even want to think about losing Brad Holmes. And to his point, Brad is by far one of the most passionate GMs in the entire league. I mean, we've seen it throughout the playoffs and throughout the end of the season. So that's 100% facts.
I would be shocked for how passionate and how much Brad has now came into Detroit and has loved the city of Detroit. You see him like in the elevator screaming, running across, opposing fields, high-fiving Lions fans. Like, you see all of that. I would be so shocked to see Brad Holmes leave Detroit. Like, just for like,
mad.
Yeah, and like for him to leave for another job just to keep doing what he's doing here. Like, I think I would be absolutely shocked. And as well too, there's no way Sheila doesn't just throw him the bag if he's getting poached from somewhere else. Like that would be the quickest way for a city and a fan base to turn on an owner is if something like that happened and she just didn't offer him enough. That would be crazy.
I would single-handedly try to burn down the city. I would be so mad.
We would be in Allen Park.
Where life isn't fair. I'd feel like a family member died or something. It just would not, like. Could you imagine getting that notification on your phone?
I would chain myself to the front door of Allen Park until they get Brad Holmes back. You will see me handcuffed to the front door in Allen Park until they fix that.
Dude, honestly,
reaction, but that's fair.
And I'll just admit it because I'm honest. That would start a deep hatred for Brad Holmes if he left. I would be so backstabbed. God. I don't. But yeah, if he left,
LeBron, it's different.
Oh,
with LeBron,
it would depend on the situation. It would depend on the situation.
Yeah, well, that's player to. Okay, relax. All right, player to GM. I would appreciate what he built, but man, I'd be so butthurt about that. I'm just being honest. I would be so butthurt, but he's not leaving. I think No, go on.
Especially seeing another franchise get him and then brag about having him in their franchise for the future. That would be the worst part, seeing another team brag on Twitter, their fan base, everything. Oh, that'd be a sad day.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. It's just, man, it's good. Hey, imagine this conversation. All right. The last decade before, more than that, before Brad Holmes. All right. Imagine maybe a team will come in and get Martin